Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Hi, welcome back to Outlaws, Gunslingers Remastered Edition, even though this should probably be a Mafia edition, but for some reason we did this as a Prohibition episode back when we first released this episode.
Oh, that's right.
When it should have been one of the first the Genovese episodes, but for some reason we decided to keep it as a Prohibition. It technically is, because this dude made a lot of money from bootlegging, so...
Yeah, it is more bootleg or prohibition era than...
But still, the pretty much father of the Mafia. Commission founder, big guy, boss of boss, old Lucky Luciano. He was the guy that started the commission and basically turned the families in what they are today. He was born Salvatore Lucania on November 24th, 1897 in Lercara Fritti, Sicily, Italy. His parents, Antonio Lucania and Rosalia Caffarella, they had 4 other children. Giuseppe, born 1885. Bartolomeo, born 1890. Felipa, or Fanny, born in 1901. And Conchetta, which was born in 1903. Luciano's father, who worked in a sulfur mine, was very ambitious and persistent and eventually moved to the United States like everybody in this time. In the last testament of Lucky Luciano, the Mafia story in his own words. It's a purported semi-autobiography that was published after his death.
Oh.
He described how his father always purchased a new Palermo-based steamship company calendar every year and would save money for the boat trip by keeping a jar under his bed.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So we got to get there.
Good for him. Wow. He also mentions in his book that his daddy was too proud to ask for any money from anybody. So instead, his mom was given money in secret by Luciano's cousin, Rotello, who was also, you think their dad would be like, where's this extra money?
Where'd you get this money from? You don't even work, woman.
Right. Who also lived in Lercara Fritti. Although the book was largely been regarded as accurate, there are numerous problems that point to the possibility that is in fact fraudulent. Well, it was put out after he's dead, so... the book was based on conversations that Luciano supposedly had with Hollywood producer Martin Gosh in the years before Luciano's death. New York Times reported shortly before the book's publication, the book quotes Luciano talking about events that occurred years after his death, repeats errors from previously published books on American Mafia, and it also describes Luciano's participation in meetings that occurred when he was in jail. Oh, man.
Oh, okay. Well, nevertheless, whatever happened right there. Him and his family, they eventually did go to New York in 1906 when he was 8 years old. They settled in, obviously, New York. And they went to Manhattan on the Lower East Side,
Manhattan.
which was a popular destination for Italian immigrants during the period. At age 14, Luciano dropped out of high school and started a job delivering hats, which earned him $7 a week. After winning $244 in a dice game, he quit his job and began earning money on the street.
Yeah, $244. What year was this?
1906. It would have been 6 years from now, so 1912.
1912, that's $245 for what, 1,000?
Couple thousand, I would say. Well, that same year, his parents sent him to the Brooklyn Truancy School. Said, boy, we're not doing this.
Well,
Didn't matter.
Right. As a teenager, Lucky started his own gang and became a member of the old 5 Points gang.
Yep.
I think we have a thing on that, don't we?
We sure do.
Unlike other street gangs whose business was petty crime, Luciano offered protections to Jewish youngsters from Italian and Irish gangs for 10 cents per week. He began learning the pimping trade in the years around World War I. Oh, Lucky met Meyer Lansky as a teenager when Luciano attempted to extort Lansky for protection money on his walk home from school. Meyer is like, dude, you don't even know who you messing with. Oh, Lucky respected the younger boy's defiant responses to his threats, and the two formed a lasting partnership that probably lasted the rest of his life.
It sure did. It's not clear how Luciano earned the nickname Lucky. It may have come from surviving a severe beating and throat slashing by 3 men in 1929. We'll get to that. As a result of his refusal to work for another crime boss. The nickname may also be attributed to his luck at gambling or to a simple mispronunciation of his last name. It is also not clear how he even...
Lucciano or something like that.
It's not even clear how he got the name Luciano.
Right.
As this too may have been the result of persistent misspellings by newspapers.
Makes sense. Americans didn't care about
And
foreigners' names back then.
And they all changed their names anyways, so people would not pronounce it wrong.
Right.
From 1916 to 36, he was arrested 25 times on charges included assault, illegal gambling, blackmail, and robbery, but no time served.
Maybe that's why he was lucky.
Right.
Well, 17th of January, 1920, 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution took effect, and prohibition ravaged the nation. It was enforced for the next 13 years.
I can't believe it was there that long, dude.
That's
crazy.
insane. The amendment prohibited the manufacture, the sale, and the transportation of all alcoholic beverages. Since
Not all.
the demand for alcohol continued, the resulting black market for alcoholic beverages provided criminals with an additional source of income, obviously. By the year of 1920, right as everybody's still recovering from the old Spanish flu, Luciano had met many future mafia leaders, including Vito Genovese and Frank Costello, the latter a longtime friend and future business partner through the 5 Points gang. Yeah, him and Frankie were...
That's where they all met. That very same year, Lower Manhattan crime boss Joe Masseria, he recruited Luciano as one of his gunmen. Around that same time as well, Luciano and his close associates started working for gambler Arnold Rothstein, who immediately saw the potential financial windfall from prohibition and educated Luciano on running bootleg alcohol as a business. Luciano, Costello, Genovese, they started their own bootlegging operation, and guess who financed it? Old Arnold himself.
Makes sense. All right, Rothstein served as a mentor for Lucky, among other things. He taught how to move in high society and to dress stylishly. He's like, if you want anybody to take you seriously, this is what you got to do, and this is how you got to look. Rothstein employed Jack Diamond.
Jack Legs Diamond.
He was like, can you be my bodyguard and also an enforcer?
That's what's the difference.
Right. Lucky often worked with Diamond as well, obviously. He started selling heroin, smuggling it in from Montreal.
Oh.
1923. As the Dutton gang were getting settled down in Montana, Lucky was caught in his sting, selling heroin to undercover cops. Although he saw no jail time, being outed as a drug peddler damaged his reputation among his high-class associates and customers. Like, I don't know if we can work with that boy anymore.
He's a drug dealer. Now, to salvage his reputation, Lucky bought 200 expensive seats to the Jack Dempsey Louis Firpo boxing match in the Bronx and distributed them to top gangsters and politicians. Rothstein took Luciano on a shopping trip to Wanamaker's department store in Manhattan. Said, you're going to buy all the expensive clothes you need for the fight.
Okay.
The strategy worked, and Luciano's reputation was saved.
Damn right it was.
By 1925, Lucky was grossing over $12 million per year.
Damn.
And made a personal income of $4 million just from running illegal gambling and bootlegging operations from New York into Philadelphia. Dude.
Wow.
Dude, that is ignorant.
You ain't kidding. Damn. By 1927, he started living at the Barbizon Plaza Hotel, living under the alias Charles Lane. He lived there for a number of years. 1929, Luciano met Gay Orlova. a featured dancer in one of Broadway's leading nightclubs, Hollywood. They were inseparable until he went to prison, but were never married. What? The girl's name's Gay?
Yeah. Obviously. Do you think it was a guy?
Yeah.
He soon became a top aide in Masseria's criminal organization. In contrast to Rothstein, Masseria was uneducated, with poor manners, and limited managerial skills. By the late 20s, his main rival, we all know, Sicilian-born boss Salvatore Maranzano.
Yeah.
And he was of the Castellamarese clan. After Gaetano Reina, one of Masseria's lieutenants, switched sides of Maranzano, Masseria, he ordered Luciano to arrange Reina's murder.
He did. After the murder took place, February 26, 1930, the rivalry between Masseria and Maranzano escalated into the bloody Castellamarese War, which we did. Masseria, Maranzano, they were Mustache Pete's, which were older traditional mafia bosses, as we stated many times. And they have started their careers in Italy. They believed in upholding the supposed old world mafia principles of honor, tradition, respect, dignity.
I mean, that's nothing to... I think you should do that anyways.
Right. These bosses refused to work with non-Italians. They were very skeptical of working with non-Sicilians as well.
Right. You know, it's only a small pool there now.
Right.
Some of the most conservative bosses worked with only these men with roots in their own Sicilian village. In contrast, Luciano is willing to work with not only Italians, but also Jews and Irish gangsters. as long as there was money to be made. Lucky was shocked to hear traditional Sicilian mafiosi lecture him about his dealings with close friend Costello, whom they called the Dirty Calabrian.
Oh, the Dirty Calabrian.
No.
Oh.
Said you can't be doing anything with the guys from Calabria. Luciano soon began cultivating ties with other younger mobsters who had been born in Italy, but began their criminal careers in the United States and chafed at their boss's conservatism. Luciano wanted to use lessons he learned from Rothstein to turn their gang activities into full-blown criminal enterprises. As the war progressed, this group came to include future mob leaders such as Costello, Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Joe Adonis, Joe Bonanno, Carlo Gambino, Joe Profaci, Tommy Gagliano, and Tommy Lucchese. They all believed their boss's greed and conservatism were keeping them poor, while the Irish and Jewish gangs got rich because they're working with everybody else. But no, these guys only want to work with the other guy or the homegrown guys. Lucky's vision was to form a national crime syndicate in which the Italian, Jewish, and Irish gangs they could pool their resources and turn organized crime into a lucrative business for all, an organization which he indeed did end up founding after a conference was hosted in Atlantic City by Luciano, Lansky, Costello, and Johnny Torrio in May 1929. Fast forward to October 1929, Lucky was forced into a limousine at gunpoint by 3 men, beaten, stabbed, strung up by his hands from a beam in a warehouse in Staten Island. Oh no. He survived the ordeal, but was forever marked with a scar and a droopy eye. Yeah, any picture you ever see for this guy, he's got it distinctly. The identity of his abductors was never established. When picked up by the police after the assault, Luciano said that he had no idea who did it either. 1953, Lucky, he told an interviewer that it was the police who kidnapped and beat him in an attempt to find Jack Legg's diamond. Another story was that Maranzano ordered the attack. Either or, whoever did it, he got his eye slashed. Busted him up. Early 1931, the Castellamarese War had turned against Masseria. Luciano saw an opportunity to switch allegiance. He struck up a secret deal with Maranzano, and Lucky agreed to engineer Masseria's death in return for receiving his rackets and becoming Maranzano's second in command. Adonis, he had joined the Masseria faction, and when Masseria heard about Luciano's betrayal, he approached Adonis about killing Lucky. However, Adonis instead warned Lucky about the murder plot. Oh, sucks to be Masseria because April 15, 1931, he was killed at Nuova Villa Tamaro, which was a Coney Island restaurant in Brooklyn. While they played cards, Luciano allegedly excused himself to go to the bathroom, at which point gunmen, which is reported to be Anastasia, Genovese, Adonis, and old Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. They supposedly entered the restaurant. Ciro Terranova drove the getaway car, but legend has it he was too shaken up to drive and had to be shoved out of the driver's seat by Siegel. With Maranzano's blessing, Lucky, he took over Masseria's gang and he became Maranzano's lieutenant, ending the Castellamarese War. And Lucky's plotting again. With Masseria gone, Maranzano, he reorganized the Italian-American gangs in New York City into the 5 families that we know today. Well, they're different names, but the 5 families, which were headed by Luciano, Profaci, Gagliano, Vincent Mangano, and himself, obviously. Maranzano called a meeting of crime bosses in Wappingers Fall, New York, where he declared himself Capo di Tutti Capi, which means boss of all bosses. Shouldn't have done that, guy. Maranzano also whittled down the rival families' rackets in favor of his own. Luciano appeared to accept these changes, but was merely biding his time before removing Maranzano too. Although Maranzano was slightly more forward-thinking than Masseria, Lucky had come to believe that he was even greedier and more hidebound than Masseria had been, so we got to get rid of this guy. All these youngins, we're going to team together and take him out. Well, by September 1931, Maranzano, he's like, man, Luciano, he's a threat. So he hired Vincent Cole, who was an Irish gangster, to kill him. However, Lucchese alerted Luciano that he was marked for death. September 10th, Maranzano ordered Luciano, Genovese, and Costello to come to his office at the Helmsley Building in Manhattan. Convinced Maranzano was planning to murder them, Luciano, he said, I'm going to act first. He then sent 4 Jewish gangsters to Maranzano's office, secured with the aid of Lansky and Siegel, whose faces were unknown to Maranzano's people. Disguised as government agents, 2 of the gangsters disarmed Maranzano's bodyguards. Lucchese, he was there too. He identified Maranzano to the other 2 gangsters, who proceeded to stab the boss multiple times before shooting him. This assassination was the first of what would later be fabled as the Night of the Sicilian Vespers. Yeah, they started taking out everybody. Several days later, September 13th, the corpses of two of Maranzano's allies, Samuel Monaco and Louis Russo, they were retrieved from Newark Bay, showing signs of torture. Meanwhile, Joseph Saragusa, leader of the Pittsburgh crime family, he was killed in his home, shot to death. It ain't done because October 15th, the disappearance of Joe Artizan, which was head of the L.A. crime family. They would later be regarded as part of this alleged plan to quickly eliminate the Mustache Pete's, which the idea of an organized mass purge directed by Luciano, it's been debunked as a myth, though. I don't know. It sounds not like a myth to me. With the death of Maranzano, Luciano became the dominant crime boss in the United States. He had reached the pinnacle of the underworld, setting policies and directing activities along with the other mafia bosses. Of course, his own crime family would be the one that controlled lucrative criminal rackets in New York City, such as illegal gambling, extortion, bookmaking, loan sharking, and drug trafficking. He became very influential in labor union activities and controlled the Manhattan waterfront, the garbage hauling, construction, and garment district businesses, plus trucking. Everything. The shipping and manufacturing. Although there would have been a few objections had Luciano declared himself Capo di Tutti Capi, he chose to abolish the title, believing the position created trouble between the families and made himself a target for another ambitious challenger. Yeah. He said, behind the scenes, I'll be the big guy, but I'm not going to call myself the big guy in public, but everybody will know. And everybody would know because instead, he chose to quietly maintain control by forging unofficial alliances with other bosses. At the same time, Luciano did not discard all of Maranzano's changes, as he believed that the ceremony of becoming a made man in a crime family was a Sicilian anachronism. Genovese ultimately persuaded Luciano to keep the ceremony, arguing that young people needed rituals to promote obedience to the family, right? Luciano, he remained committed to the Omerta, which is the oath of silence to protect the families from legal prosecution. In addition, he kept Maranzano's structure of the five families in New York as well. Now, Lucky then elevated his most trusted Italian associates to high-level positions in what was now the Luciano crime family. Genovese, he became the underboss. Castello, the consigliere. Adonis, Michael Trigger Mike Capola, Anthony Strollo, Willie Moretti, and Anthony Carfano all served as capos. Because Lansky and Siegel were non-Italians, neither man could officially hold positions within any mafia family, but Lansky was a top advisor to Luciano, and Siegel was a trusted associate. Later in 1931, Lucky called a meeting in Chicago with various bosses, where he then proposed a commission to serve as the governing body for organized crime. Yep, got to keep it within the family, no hits. It was designed to settle all disputes and decide which families controlled which territories. The commission has been called Luciano's greatest innovation. His goals with the commission were to quietly maintain his own power over all the families and to prevent future gang wars. The bosses approved of the commission, and it's underway. It was originally composed of representatives of the five families in New York, plus the Buffalo crime family and the Chicago outfit. Later, Philadelphia and Detroit were added, with smaller families being formally represented by a commission family. The commission also provided representation for Jewish criminal organizations in New York. The group's first test came in 1935 when it ordered Dutch Schultz to drop his plans to murder Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey. Luciano argued that such an assassination would precipitate a massive law enforcement crackdown. The National Crime Syndicate had enacted a hard and fast rule stating that law enforcement and prosecutors were not to be harmed. An enraged Schultz said he would kill Dewey anyway and walked out of the meeting. Shouldn't have did that, old Schultz. Later, old Albert Anastasia approached Luciano with info that Schultz had asked him to stake out Dewey's apartment on Fifth Avenue. Upon hearing this, the commission held a discreet meeting to discuss the matter. After about 6 hours of deliberations, the commission ordered Lepke Buckhalter to eliminate Schultz. And that time came October 23rd, 1935. Schultz was shot in a tavern in Newark, New Jersey, and succumbed to his injuries the following day.
During the early 30s, Luciano and his crime family, they started taking over small-scale prostitution operations in New York City. You bastards. In June of 1935, New York Governor Herbert Lehman appointed Dewey, which was a United States attorney, as special prosecutor to combat organized crime in his very city.
Well, should have had him killed.
Well, Dewey's assistant district attorney, Eunice Carter, he led an investigation that connected Lucky to this prostitution network. Carter began to build a case of prostitution racketeering, founded on evidence from interviews with prostitutes and wiretaps. Ooh, those damn wiretaps.
I know, even then. February 2nd, 1936, Dewey, he authorized a raid on 200 brothels in Manhattan and Brooklyn, earning him nationwide recognition as a major gangbuster.
Oh, he's a gangbuster.
He took measures.
Who are you going to call?
Gangbusters. He took measures to prevent police corruption from impeding the raids. He assigned 160 police officers outside of New York City's police department's Vice Squad to conduct the raids, and the officers were instructed to wait on street corners until they received their orders, which was only minutes before the raids were to begin. 16 men, 87 women were arrested.
Oh.
However, unlike previous vice raids, the arrestees were not released, but taken to Dewey's offices, where Judge Philip McCook set minimum bails of $10,000, which was far beyond their means to pay.
You ain't kidding. That's a lot of money back then.
You guys are staying in jail.
Damn, Carter, he built trust with a number of the arrested prostitutes and madams, some of whom reported being beaten and abused by mafiosi. She convinced many to testify rather than to serve additional jail time. By mid-March, several defendants had implicated Lucky. 3 of the prostitutes identified Lucky as the ringleader, to whom associates David Botello and Thomas Paniccio ultimately reported to. He's like, yeah, he's the main guy right there.
Late March 1936, after receiving a tip on his imminent arrest, Lucky, he fled to Hot Spring, Arkansas.
Ooh.
We are going to have an episode about that. It's a mob
shortly.
hot town.
Yeah,
Hot Spring, hot town.
It was a hot town for outlaws and gunslingers
And mafiosi.
yeah.
A New York detective in Hot Springs on a different assignment spotted Lucky and notified Dewey right away. April 3rd, Lucky, he was arrested in Hot Springs on a criminal warrant from New York, charging him with 90 counts of compulsory prostitution.
Oh, shit.
Lucky's lawyers in Arkansas began a fierce legal battle against extradition. April 6th, Oni Madden, who was a one-time owner of the Cotton Club, he offered a $50,000 bribe to Arkansas Attorney General Carl Bailey to facilitate Luciano's case.
Uh-oh.
However, being the straight-laced guy Bailey was, he refused the bribe and immediately reported it.
17th April, after Lucky's legal options had been exhausted, the Arkansas authorities handed him to the 3 NYPD detectives for transport by train back to New York. He said, "You're going to New York for trial, Lucky." When the train reached St. Louis, Missouri, the detectives and Luciano changed trains. During this switchover, they were guarded by 20 local policemen to prevent a mob rescue attempt. The party arrived in New York on April 18th. Lucky arraigned, jailed the following day, after he failed to post a $350,000 bond. Ooh, set by Judge McCook.
Don't know why he couldn't afford it, but
Right.
May 11th, 1936, Luciano's pandering trial began. Dewey, he personally prosecuted the case that Carter had begun against Luciano and 12 co-defendants. He accused Lucky of being part of a massive prostitution ring known as the bonding combination.
All right.
He also exposed Lucky for lying on the witness stand through direct quizzing and records of telephone calls. Luciano could not explain why his federal income tax records claimed he only made $22,000 a year. Well, he was obviously walking around with probably suits that cost just as much.
Right.
Gotta explain that, bud. That's why you have to have a front job, dude.
Oh, wow. Dewey ruthlessly pressed Lucky on his long arrest record, and also his relationships with well-known gangsters, such as Masseria, Terra Nova, and Buckalter. On the 7th of June, Lucky and his remaining 8 co-defendants, they were each convicted on 62 counts of compulsory prostitution.
Damn.
Wow. About a week later, on 18th of June, Lucky sentenced to 30 to 50 years in state prison. Wow. In his book, 5 Families, longtime New York Times organized crime columnist Selwyn Robb, he wrote that a number of scholars have questioned whether Lucky was directly involved in the bonding combination.
Directly, maybe not, but obviously he got some kickback from it.
Do you think so?
According to Robb, there was evidence that Luciano profited from prostitution, and several members of his family ran a protection racket that ensnared many of New York's madams and brothel keepers.
Oh.
However, he also wrote that several mafia and legal scholars, they believe that it would have been out of character for a crime boss of Lucky's stature to be directly involved in the ring.
All right.
Robb wrote that the evidence Dewey presented against Luciano was astonishingly thin, and he argued that it would have been more appropriate to charge Luciano with extortion instead.
Yeah.
Robb, he also believed that Luciano's defense team, which was led by attorney George Morton Levy, they erred in allowing him to take the stand in his own defense, right? Which opened the door for Dewey to attack his credibility on cross-examination.
Oh.
Should have just Pled the fifth, bud.
Right. All 4 of the prostitutes are directly implicated Lucky in the bonding combination. Nancy Presser, Mildred Harris, Thelma Jordan, and Florence Cokie Flo Brown. They recanted their testimony after the trial, and at least 2 of Luciano's contemporaries have denied that they even ever was part of the combination. In her memoirs, New York Society Madam, Polly Adler, wrote that if Lucky had been involved with the combination, she would have known. Bonanno, the last surviving contemporary of Luciano's, who was not in prison, also denied that Lucky was directly involved. There's no way he was involved in this prostitution. He wrote that in his book of A Man of Honor.
Not a man of honor if you're writing a book about being in the mob, number 1.
Right.
Number 2, obviously this was the way to get him, just like they did with Capone and the taxes.
Yeah, they got
Clearly.
Capone. They got Capone.
Bonanno believed that several of Luciano's soldiers used his name to intimidate brothel keepers into paying for protection.
I can believe that.
And he argued that Dewey built his case not so much against Luciano as against Luciano's name.
Yeah.
Key witnesses at Lucky's trial, they testified that he was involved with prostitution racketeering, and he frequently discussed the sex industry business, once describing it as the same as the A&P stores are, a large syndicate, and the same as chain stores. And ordering an underling to, quote-unquote, go ahead and crack the joint when a brothel fell behind on its kickbacks.
Ooh.
One witness testified that Lucky, working out of his Waldorf Astoria suite, he personally hired him to collect from bookers and madams. Personally hired him.
Lucky continued to run his crime family from prison, relaying his orders through acting boss Genovese. 1937, Genovese fled to Naples. He did that to avoid impending murder indictment in New York. So then Lucky, he appointed his concierge, Frank Costello, as the new acting boss and the overseer of Luciano's interests. Lucky was first in prison at Sing Sing Correctional Facility in Ossining, New York. Later, in 1936, authorities moved him to Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora. This is a remote facility far, far, far away from New York City.
Dannemora will have a future remastered episode that we did a while back about the Dannemora prison escape.
Oh, yeah. At Clinton, Botello, he prepared special dishes for Luciano in a kitchen set aside by authorities.
Aww.
It's kind of like what they did in Goodfellas.
Supposedly. Lucky he was assigned a job in the prison laundry. Luciano used his influence to help get the materials to build a church at the prison, which became famous for being one of the only freestanding churches in the New York State correctional system.
No shit.
And also for the fact that on the church's altar are 2 of the original doors from the Victoria, which was the ship of the Ferdinand Magellan.
No shit.
Really?
That'd be awesome.
Lucky's legal appeals continued till October 10th, 1938, when the United States Supreme Court refused to review it. At this point, Luciano stepped down as family boss. There's nothing more I can do. And Costello, he officially replaced him.
Okay. Well, Lucky got lucky. During World War II, the United States government struck a secret deal with imprisoned Luciano. In 1942, the Office of Naval Intelligence was concerned about the German and Italian agents entering the country through the New York waterfront. They were all worried about sabotage in these facilities. Knowing that the Mafia controlled the waterfront, the United States Department of Navy contacted Meyer Lansky about a deal with Lucky. They wanted Lucky to facilitate negotiations. Luciano was transferred to Great Meadow Correctional Facility in Comstock, New York, which was much closer to New York City.
They're like, we're not going 200-300 miles up to the bumfuck Egypt. The Navy stayed in New York, and Luciano reached a deal. In exchange for a commutation of his sentence, Lucky promised the complete assistance of his organization and provided intelligence to the Navy.
Hey, why not?
Anastasia, a Luciano ally who controlled the docks, allegedly promised no dock worker strikes during the war. And in preparation for the 1943 Allied invasion of Sicily, Luciano allegedly provided the U.S. military with Sicilian Mafia contacts.
Oh.
Not allegedly. This is all proven.
Right.
This collaboration between the Navy and the Mafia became known as Operation Underworld.
Well, they had to, because in Sicily, they were under attack by Italy themselves.
Well, not only that, in Sicily and Italy, Mussolini wanted the Mafia out. So the Mafia was like, nah, man, we're going to help get rid of this guy so we can stay. So we'll work with you.
Damn right they will. The value of Lucky's contribution to the war effort is highly debated, though. In 1947, the naval officer in charge of Operation Underworld discounted the value of his
Of course, they're going to after the fact.
1954 report, ordered by now Governor Dewey. Wow. He stated that Lucky provided many valuable sources to naval intelligence. enemy threat to the docks, Luciano allegedly said, was manufactured by the sinking of the SS Normandy in New York Harbor. But it was supposedly directed by Anastasia's brother, Anthony Anastasio. However, the official investigation of the ship sinking found no evidence of sabotage whatsoever. Sure, that's what they say.
So they're trying to say... right. So they're trying to say that the mob did it in order to, like, strike this deal up.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I bet they did.
January 3rd, and they're not, of course, they're not going to
admit it.
They're not going to, right. They're like, the mafia just took out a whole fucking ship.
Right.
Yeah, right.
The government can do anything about it?
Jeez.
Yeah.
January 3rd, 1946, as a presumed reward for his alleged wartime cooperation, Dewey reluctantly commuted Luciano's pandering sentence on condition he not resist deportation to Italy.
Oh.
Of course, Lucky accepted the deal.
Right.
Although he still maintained he was a U.S. citizen and not subject to deportation.
Too bad.
Right. February 2nd, 1946, 2 federal immigration agents transported Lucky from Sing Sing to Ellis Island in New York Harbor for deportation proceedings.
Yep, gotta go, bud. Gotta go.
February 9th, the night before his departure, Luciano shared a spaghetti dinner on his freighter with Anastasia and 5 other guests.
Fantastic. You think there was meatballs?
I'm sure there was. Can't have spaghetti without meatballs.
Right.
February 10th, his ship sailed from Brooklyn for Italy. February 28th, after 17 days, it arrived in Naples. On arrival, Lucky told reporters he would probably reside in Sicily.
You have no choice, bud.
Well, Sicily, there's a lot of other Italian...
You definitely want to go to Sicily, though. Unless was he a hated man in Sicily, though?
Probably not.
Oh, he killed all the old mustache beats, though.
You don't care.
All right. October 1946. Luciano secretly relocated to the Cuban capital, Havana. Yes, and this is when all the good stuff starts happening. He first took a freighter from Naples to Caracas, which is in Venezuela. Then he took a flight to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Then he took a flight to Mexico City. And then he doubled back to Caracas, where he took a private plane to Camagüey, Cuba.
Got to keep them off their... keep them on their toes, man.
He finally arrived on October 29th. He was then driven to Havana, where he moved into an estate in the Miramar section of the city. Lucky wanted to move closer to the United States so that he could resume control over the American Mafia operations, and he had plans to eventually return home.
He was already established as a major investor in Cuban gambling and hotel projects. Lansky suggested Luciano and Siegel invest about $500,000 to fund Luciano's casinos. Lansky delivered the money to Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista, who was guaranteed $3 to $5 million annually.
Yeah, he was definitely going to get that.
Heck yeah. Because he's getting so much shit blocked by the U.S. right now because they wanted to install Fidel, but nobody wants to say that.
Right. That's why everybody's like, how come Cuba only has like cars from the 50s? Well, it's because the United States stopped sending them in the 60s. They haven't got new cars until like what? 2000 and
Obama or somebody opened up deals or whatever back with him. In 1946, Lansky called a meeting of the heads of the major crime families in Havana that December, which obviously is dubbed the Havana Conference.
We did an episode on that. Thing on that.
The ostensible reason was to see singer Frank Sinatra perform.
Yeah.
Which everybody don't know, Frank Sinatra had big mob ties.
Oh, yeah.
However, obviously the real reason was to discuss mob business with Luciano in attendance.
Yeah, you got it. There was 3 topics that need to be discussed. They were heroin trade, Cuban gambling, and what to do about Bugsy and his floundering Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Bugsy fucked up that one.
Well, Las Vegas was just getting started, and you know,
but
what are you gonna do?
Some fishy stuff.
Yeah.
In Siegel's episode, which we'll get to, some fishy shit went on with that.
There was. The conference took place at the Hotel Nacional de Cuba and lasted a little more than a week. During the conference, December 20th, Lucky, he had a private meeting with Genovese in Luciano's hotel suite. The year before, the United States Army Criminal Investigation Division, they shipped Genovese from Italy to New York. They wanted to face trial in his 1934 murder charge.
Yeah, but in 1946 of June, the charges were dismissed, which left Genovese free to return to mob business.
Damn right it did.
Unlike Costello, Luciano had never trusted Genovese. In the meeting, Genovese tried to convince Luciano to become a titular boss of bosses.
He didn't want to. He didn't want it.
And to him to let Genovese run everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Luciano calmly rejected Genovese's suggestion, saying, "There is no boss of bosses. I turned it down in front of everybody.
Right.
If I ever change my mind, I'll take the title. But it won't be up to you. Right now, you work for me, and I ain't in the mood to retire. Don't you ever let me hear this again, or I'll lose my temper. This is not going to say it, but he supposedly beat the shit out of Genovese. Like,
sure
fractured his orbital bone and shit like that. Like,
Holy
beat him.
Shit. Damn. Soon after the conference began, the United States government learned that Lucky was in Cuba. Lucky had been publicly fraternizing with Sinatra, as well as visiting numerous nightclubs.
And it's also word on the street that Genovese had tipped him off to it.
Yeah, so when everybody found out that Lucky was in Havana, it was not even a secret anymore. The United States started putting pressure on the Cuban government to expel him. On the 21st of February, 1947, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics Commissioner Harry Anslinger, notified the Cubans that the United States would block all shipment of narcotic prescription drugs while Lucky remained in the country. 2 days later, the Cuban government announced that Lucky was in custody and he would be deported to Italy within 48 hours.
Is that we need our prescription drugs, guys?
You got to go back, bud.
Jeez.
You got to go.
Luciano was then placed on a freighter. Said, "Get the hell out of here. You're bound for Genoa."
Oh, wow.
After a secret trip to Cuba.
Where they make the salami?
Genoa? You
Isn't
thinking
that what
of
it's called?
Geneva?
Is it Geneva? I think it's Genoa
There's a
salami.
Geneva Convention. I don't know. Genoa cheese?
Genoa salami, right?
I don't know. After a secret trip to Cuba, Luciano spent the rest of his life in Italy under tight police surveillance.
Oh.
When he arrived in Genoa, April 11th, 1947, Italian police arrested him and sent him to jail in Palermo.
For what?
On May 11th, a regional commission in Palermo warned Luciano to stay out of trouble and released him.
Oh.
This is a warning, buddy. Don't go, but you better not step foot on any freaking ocean vessel.
Wow. In early 1948, he met Igia Lizzoni, a Milanese ballerina, which was 20 years his junior, whom he later described as the love of his life. Aww. Milanese.
Milan, Italy.
Yeah. In the summer, Lizzoni moved in with them. Although some reports said the couple married in 1949. Others state that they only exchanged rings.
Who cares?
That's enough. Lucky and Lizzoni lived together in Luciano's house in Naples. He continued to have affairs with other women.
I mean, obviously.
Got to. Resulting in many arguments with Lizzoni, during which he physically struck her multiple times.
Not surprising at all either.
With his penis.
And her tonsils. Early July 1949, police in Rome, they arrested Lucky on suspicion of involvement in the shipping of narcotics to New York. July 15th, after about a week in jail, they released him without filing any charges.
Oh.
The authorities also permanently banned him from visiting Rome, though. No more Colosseum visits for you, buddy.
Oh, fuck.
June 9th, 1951, Luciano was questioned by Naples police on suspicion of illegally bringing $57,000 in cash and a new American card into Italy.
Oh, piss off.
For some reason, this warranted 20 hours of questioning, and they released him without any charges.
What an asshole.
Jeez.
Like you can't have $50,000 in cash.
Right.
1952, the Italian government revoked Lucky's passport after complaints from U.S. and Canadian law enforcement officials. On the 1st of November 1954, an Italian judicial commission in Naples, they applied strict limits on Lucky for 2 years. He was required to report to the police every Sunday. He had to stay home every night.
Jeez.
He was not to leave Naples without police permission whatsoever.
Why? He's not even he's not
right
on like parole, probation, or nothing.
I think because the United States government has a stranglehold on this
Clearly.
shit. The commission,
they own Italy right now.
Right. The commission cited Lucky's alleged involvement in narcotics trade as the reason for these restrictions.
Whatever.
Alleged. You can't do something because he's alleged.
In Italy, you can.
I guess. Jeez.
By 1957, Genovese felt strong enough to move against Luciano and his acting boss, Costello.
This guy's got to go.
He was aided in this move by Gambino, which was now the Anastasia family's underboss. May 2nd, following Genovese's orders, Vincent Gigante,
The chin.
he ambushed Costello in the lobby of a Central Park apartment building. Gigante called out, "This is for you, Frank." And as Costello turned, he shot him in the head. After firing his weapon, Gigante quickly left, thinking he had killed him. However, the bullet only grazed Costello's head, and he was not seriously injured.
Good for you, Frank.
That was enough.
That scared him, though. Although Costello refused to cooperate with the Popo, Gigante was arrested for attempted moita. I think when the bellman
One
seen
of
it.
the door guys said, yeah, it was him.
He was acquitted at trial. And thanking Costello in the courtroom after the verdict.
Right.
Oh.
Supposedly walked past him and was like, "Thanks, Frank."
Right. Costello was allowed to retire after conceding control of what is today called the Genovese crime family. He gave power to Genovese.
Clearly.
Lucky was powerless to stop these events.
What's he going to do? He can't even leave his house.
Damn. 25th of October, 1957. Genovese, Gambino. They successfully arranged the murder of Anastasia. He had to go, which was another Lucky ally. They had to get rid of anybody close to Lucky. The following month, Genovese called a meeting of bosses in Appalachian, New York, which I think we did that, of course. This meeting was to approve his takeover of the Genovese family and to establish his national power as boss of all bosses.
Well, instead, the meeting turned into a fiasco when law enforcement became aware of the meeting and raided it.
They did. A bunch of people just running everywhere.
Over 65 high-ranking mobsters were arrested, and the Mafia was subjected to publicity and numerous grand jury summonses.
Oh, wow.
The enraged mobsters blamed Genovese for the disaster, opening a window of opportunity for Genovese's opponents. Lucky, he allegedly attended a meeting at a hotel in Palermo to discuss heroin trade as part of the French Connection.
Oh, right. See, he can still do stuff. After this meeting, Lucky allegedly helped pay part of the $100,000 to a Puerto Rican drug dealer to falsely implicate Genovese in a drug deal.
Yeah.
4th of April, 1959, Genovese, convicted in New York of conspiracy to violate federal narcotic laws. Sent to prison for 15 years.
Didn't matter.
Well, he tried to run his crime family from prison until his death in 1969. Tried. Didn't work very well.
Well, 1959, Lasoni, she died of breast cancer.
Son of a...
Luciano never had children. He once provided his reasons for it as, I didn't want no son of mine to go through a life as the son of Luciano the gangster.
Oh.
That's one thing I still hate Dewey for, making me a gangster in the eyes of the world.
Oh, wow.
Well, you did it yourself, buddy.
Right. How do you know he had a son, though?
Right. Unfortunately for this guy, January 26, 1962, he died of a heart attack at Naples Airport.
Wow, he was not even 70.
He's supposedly gone there to meet with American producer Martin Gosh about a film based on his life.
1887 he was born?
Something like that.
So almost, a little over 70.
To avoid antagonizing other Mafia members, Luciano had previously refused to authorize a film, but reportedly relented after the death of Lasoni.
Fuck it, you might as well,
Or
right?
whatever, ain't got nothing else.
Well, after the meeting with Gosh, Lucky had a heart attack and died, as we said earlier, unaware that the Italian drugs agents had followed him to the airport in anticipation of arresting him on drug smuggling charges.
Jeez.
3 days later, 300 people attended a funeral service for Lucky in Naples. His body was conveyed along the streets of Naples in a horse-drawn hearse. With the permission of the United States government, Lucky's relatives took his body back to New York for burial. He's buried right now in St. John Cemetery in Middle Village, Queens. More than 2,000 mourners attended his funeral because he was like a loved man in the streets, man. Gambino, Luciano's longtime friend, gave his eulogy. 1998, Time characterizes Luciano as the criminal mastermind among the top 20 most influential builders and titans of the 20th century.
Yeah, got a lot done, man, especially in New York. Yes, sir.
There you go, Lucky. Good for you, bud. Still talking about you today, man.
I'll bring the beers. I'll bring the beers.
I'll bring the heroin.
That's old Lucky Luciano's story, and yeah, good one. Good for him.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
You know, the one that made the Mafia what it is today, basically, and still follows all the rules that he put into place. So,
all right.
Well, it's remastered, so next week, you know what it is? We're flying back in for some serial killing.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, we'll be back next week for some sort of serial killing, so stay tuned with us then, and we'll see you then for more Outlaws and Gunslingers. This is the Mother Michigan as well.
Ring, ring.